Hello. This is just the right height, isn't it? Okay, you can hear me all right? I'm sure you all remember the Great Snow of 1982. Well, I'll give you a clue. There really was one. I was there. I was here. You might know from the accent I'm from the United States. I've been living here for 30 years. Spent a fair bit of that time in County Wicklow in the lovely village of Avoca, well, just outside the village, in the Vale of Avoca. I'm from Michigan, had a farm in northern Michigan, and I know snow. On the 16th of January, 1982, I was walking home from a friend's house about midnight, walking south toward my house, and some big snowflakes came floating down the road. And I sniffed. I said, now this is a real snowstorm. This isn't one of your nammy-pammy Irish snow flurries, no, where it's going to sit on the ground for about 2 hours and melt. This is real snow. And I was right. I went home. Now, I don't know if you know the Vale of Avoca, about a mile north of the village of Avoca, on what's called the Vale Road, the main road in the immediate area. There is a bell rock, which is shaped like a bell, up one side of the Avoca River on the south side. And it's very, very steep. You can't go up straight. You have to go around the back to get up to the top. It's almost perpendicular. And it comes down. You have the river there at the bottom of the valley, and you go up to the Spink. Now, Spink is an Irish word which describes that particular kind of hill. It's very steep, and it goes up sort of like that. And there are spinks all over Ireland. So you get the Spink and you get the Bell Rock opposite each other. I was living on the Spink side, a bit north and downhill from the Spink, a little bit above the river. I had a wooden cottage. You I'm sure won't remember Wesley Burroughs. He was, I think still is maybe a writer for RTE. But Wesley Burroughs bought the cottage, and I was living in a wooden building next to the cottage, which was Wesley Burroughs' wife's weaving studio. And nearly a quarter of it was filled with her big Donegal loom. I lived there for a few years. It had been bought by Wesley Burroughs from the county council. It was a county council construction site office building. So it was wooden, one floor, one big room, about 16 feet by 20 feet. No ceiling, just the roof going up like that. No insulation. It was perched on the side of the hill, so one side of the cottage was lying on the ground, and to make it even, went out like this, and there were stone pillars built up about this high on the downhill side. It was very comfortable. I enjoyed it. Had a wood-burning stove. Used to go out into the woods and gather firewood for myself on my shoulders, saw it up, and burn it. When you gather your own firewood, it warms 3 times. When you cut it down, when you haul it home, and when you cut it up. And then 4 times, actually, when you put it in the stove. So I went to bed in the middle of the snowstorm, at the beginning of the snowstorm. Woke up in the morning. It seemed to be time to wake up, but it was dark. I looked at the clock, turned on a light, looked at the clock, and it was supposed to be daylight, but it wasn't. I opened the door, which fortunately opened inwards, and saw that the windows and the door were completely covered with snow. It had just snowed and snowed and snowed, and it kept on snowing, and it was up past the door. So I had, in the rafters, I had some firewood, and I burned up that. I had to open the door and tunnel down through the snow to get under the house where I kept my extra firewood where it would keep dry. And after a couple of days, it just kept right on snowing. I had run out of firewood. I didn't want to break up the furniture. So I tunneled up through the snow this time, looked around, and across the valley, where some of the nearest neighbors were, you could see a little bit of like a thread of smoke coming up through what looked like a gopher hole, like a little funnel, right? The houses were completely buried, the chimney was under, but because it was warm, there was this funnel and the smoke was coming out. And the only tops of trees that were around were the tops of pine trees. Now, I don't know if you understand about burning wood. You cannot burn the small end branches of a pine tree. They simply won't burn. They're too juicy, they're too green, and they just spit all over the place and they won't burn. I had had my eye on a dead tree for a long time. I could see it across the valley on top of the Bell Rock. It was a big pine tree that had been dead for a while, but it hadn't fallen down, so I guessed it wasn't rotten. But it looked like an awful lot of trouble to go over there and cut it down. Besides, it didn't belong to me. I don't know whose property that was over there. But there was no firewood to be had, and of course nobody out and about. So I took my trusty saw and wandered with the wellies, wandered across the valley and up behind the Bell Rock to get up to the top. And with great effort, chopped down the tree, lopped off the branches. Now, how am I going to get it home? Down the Bell Rock, partway up the Spink, across the river, up the Spink, across the railroad tracks, across the road and everything. I had a brilliant idea. All the branches were cut off. It was just a log. I gave it a kick. Right down the Bell Rock, down across the road, across the under the railroad tracks at that point. No, over the railroad tracks. Across the river, across the railroad tracks, up the Spink. It paused, and it came back down. Came back up to the Bell Rock, paused, came back down, across the river, up, back up to the Bell Rock. Well, I wasn't able to catch it. It was too heavy anyway to catch, to hold on if I could catch it. So I went home and had lunch, and came back, and here was this big log still making this trip up and down the Spink, up and down the Bell Rock. And but a bobsled ride, it's like ice. And the friction of this thing passing had melted the snow, had frozen again into ice. And so it was really, really stick. And it was just whipping along, back and forth, back and forth. And I saw I wasn't going to be able to catch it. I had a few sticks left over I could still burn. So went home, went to bed, got up in the morning, hoping nobody had stolen my log. Looked out to the Bell Rock, looked up to the Spink, looked down by the river. No log. Somebody nicked it. My log. So I went down to the river, which was right in the middle of the valley, and had a look down there. And lo and behold, there was the log. It had worked up so much friction and worn off so much of the log, there was nothing left of it except just a little tiny piece. Now, some people don't believe that story. If you don't believe that, here it is right here.
Thanks for that, Richard. That was great. Okay, now, this time I want you to just shout if you think that was true. If it was true, say true. Yeah! If it was false, shout false. Okay? Richard, enlighten us.
You're all correct. There really was a big snow that started on the 16th of January, 1982. I really did live in Avoca, and the buses didn't. The Dublin schools, all the schools closed for a few days. The buses didn't run for a week. Even the trains didn't run for 3 days. That is all absolutely fact. It was a great time.
Thanks very much, Richard. Well done. By the way,